We are Rogue Media Sports.
A lot can happen between falling in love with a house online and owning it. Between imagining living there and breathing in your new home for the first time. Having an advocate who can help you navigate the complex world of financing, inspections, negotiating, analyzing the market, and talking through any anxieties that may pop up, that can make all the difference. That's what the expertise of a Realtor can do for you. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors and bound by a code of ethics, because that's who we are.
You haven't heard about the McCrispy yet? Well, then, you probably haven't heard the sweet silence after the first crispy bite either. Go try it for yourself to hear the best nut sound you've ever heard.
Are you at your place, Ron?
Is his connection bad?
Yeah, Ron's phone's, it's just not, for some reason, we're having with a three-way call. Ed's in Colorado, I'm in Dallas, Ron's in Philly, wherever he is. Ron, are you able to use like a landline where you are?
I am. I do not have a landline where I am. I'm down in my shore house, and I'm actually, like most people, eliminating landlines. You want to try me, call me back, see if we can.
Yeah, let's try. Let's do the call. We'll call you, and we'll set it up one more time and just see if it sounds a little better. It's just for some reason you're kind of cutting in and out.
Back and see if it's better.
Okay.
He's at the shore, boys. Come on.
Okay. All right. We'll try it again. It is another episode of the Doomsday Podcast, and once again, my co-host and close friend Ed Werder has come up. He's landed a big fish. It works with this guy because Ron Jaworski, Jaws himself, is joining us. Long-time ESPN. You've seen him for years, but obviously more well-known even as the great Eagles quarterback. Joining us from the shore today is Ron Jaworski. Ron, thank you for doing this. And is this is a podcast? Is that something you've done a lot of, or are we your first?
No, I've done a number of podcasts, and I really enjoy doing them because we can drill down. There are no time constraints. I'm actually at the Jersey Shore where it's a beautiful day. Just wrapped up my golf tournament a couple of days ago, my annual fundraising golf tournament for my foundation, the Jaws Youth Playbook, which raises money for at-risk youth in our community. And, of course, Ed Werder, I was very thankful, was able to join me on Sunday and Monday and help us raise some money. So, we raised some money, we played some golf, and now we're going to talk some football.
You know what, Jaws? It's too bad that somebody like Roger Staubach didn't have golf tournament back in the day for at-risk kids in his community, because perhaps Matt Mosley could have been saved.
Way to get it started, Ed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you're at the Jersey Shore because, as we know, that's where all the big fish come from. And I wanted to ask you, I didn't get a chance to talk football with you at the event the other day, which I'm grateful to be invited to. It's really the first celebrity golf tournament ever to consider me a celebrity of any measure. And so I appreciate that when you really got down to it and didn't have enough golfers to fill all the vacancies, that you were willing to invite me to be there. And I always will be there, Jaws. I'll always be there for you.
Ed, you are incorrect. You are always invited. You are always at the top of the list. You bring great credibility to the tournament. You actually help us with the auction. And by the way, I'm very thankful to Rich Dalrymple of Dallas Cowboys. One of the trips that we auction off, and obviously very important here in Philadelphia, is a trip to Dallas when the Eagles play the Cowboys. And the Cowboys help us so much with accommodations, and they give us lower level seats for the game, sideline passes. So I'm very thankful not only to you for helping raise that money, but to the Dallas Cowboys for their contribution helping us raise money.
And I not only got up on stage at Jaws' invitation to help raffle this off, but I actually made several bids because Rich Dalrymple doesn't provide me sideline access or lower-level seats. And so it was worth my attempt to invest in that, to acquire that for the game. So you were obviously the only quarterback who first led the Eagles to the Super Bowl, and you're very familiar with the Doomsday defense, for which this podcast is named. Any significant memories from your days competing against those great Dallas defenses?
How much time do we have, Ed?
Podcast all the time you need, Ron.
There you go. In fact, it was kind of interesting. At the golf on Monday was Thomas Henderson, and obviously Thomas, a great Dallas Cowboy linebacker, and the guys I played against for many years, and a guy that certainly I'm thankful to. He comes to my golf tournament, helps us raise money, and certainly a man that changed his life around. But Thomas was one of those great players, along with the guys that I would toe to toe with so many years. The Randy Whites and guys like that, the Bob Brunigs and the Cliff Harrises, you name it. Even prior to that, in 1977 when I came to Philadelphia, but my formative years in the NFL when I was with the Los Angeles Rams, we lost a championship game to the Dallas Cowboys, and they whipped our butt in the championship game. So my days against the Dallas Cowboys doomsday way back, and most of those memories are not good because it was a great it was the 4-3 flex defense, Tom Landry's baby. Great players, great scheme, great design, and tough to move the ball against.
Jaws, you're such a great storyteller, and we've enjoyed hearing you over the years tell these stories. Now, do you have, since we are the Doomsday Podcast, me growing up in this area, I idolize, the Harvey Martins of the world, Ed Too Tall Jones. I mean, these are still, even though I've gotten to know Ed and some of the others, these are like mythical characters to us. Are there any stories that stand out that you remember about anything they said to you when they had you down after a sack, or anything that stands out over the years?
Well, first of all, they weren't that kind of team where they were mouthy. It was a Tom Landry coach football team that played with great discipline, and we had incredible respect for the Dallas Cowboys. And in fact, if I think of a moment that was maybe the biggest in my career, or one of the biggest, it was beating the Dallas Cowboys in the 1980 NFC Championship game. And I say it for this reason. When I came to Philadelphia, we had great respect for the Dallas Cowboys and Tom Landry. Dick Vermeil idolized Tom Landry. And every day we would hear about it. If we're going to be a football team, we're going to bust our butt. Dallas Cowboys are the team that we have to beat. They're the best team. They're the best organization. They're the best coach. So that was always our goal. Steve Sable at NFL Films had coined the term America's team. And, so we knew that was the team that we had to beat. So everything we did, all the off-season work, all the training camp work, the two-a-days that went for 7 weeks, were all geared toward beating the Dallas Cowboys, and rightfully so. They were the best team. They were the best organization. When I think back to moments that kind of crystallized my career in Philadelphia and against the Cowboys, it was beating them in the NFC Championship game in 1980.
That was your most meaningful victory of your career, Ron?
I would say yes. In fact, most people say that was our Super Bowl. Lost to the Raiders 2 weeks later, and most people felt that was the game that we had focused on. That was the team we had to beat. And there wasn't much left in the tank against the Oakland Raiders. I would personally disagree with that. I think we were better than the Raiders in Super Bowl 50. Just didn't play better, and consequently lost the football game.
What was the when you think about the flex defense? And I remember I've talked to Charlie Waters and Cliff a whole lot about this over the last many years. And I think one of the things they really appreciated was at some point they were given the freedom to kind of freelance and do some things within the flex. There was some, I guess, flexibility in what they could do. What was it about it specifically from just a facing it that made it so difficult?
I think number one, they're great talent. And it starts with the talent. Yes, scheme is important, but players win football games. And we in Philadelphia and Los Angeles with the Rams spent countless of hours trying to analyze what the defense was doing. When the end was off, what did that mean? And we really came up with no rhyme or reason who would next, what that meant, what slant they would use, what coverage they would use. there was never really any hint you would get from playing against a flex defense. You could probably ask, the Randy Whites and the two Jones and those guys, they were intelligent. If you don't have players that can make plays and play with discipline, I don't care what defense you play.
Talking to Ron Jaworski, Jaws himself from the Jersey Shore. It is Edward or Matt Mosley, the Doomsday Podcast, coming to you live from Frito Nation Productions. And Ron, so much has been talked about here. We'll talk about the Eagles quarterback, Carson Wentz, who has been provided with a lot more help at wideout. But first, since this is a Cowboys intensive podcast, what do you think about what you've seen so far from Dak? And now you've obviously had tremendous success in the NFL. What will be the toughest thing for him in year two when teams have more time now to study him and try to prepare for him?
Well, first of all, Dak had an unbelievable season for a rookie. He was very, very impressive. And for someone to say they weren't surprised by that would be crazy. I actually liked coming out of Mississippi State. I did not expect him to be the starter and play as well as he did. But the one thing I love about the offseason, I don't have to prepare for a lot of shows and get ready for NFL matchup, countdown, all the shows that we do throughout the NFL season. I can sit in my office at NFL Films, just plug the tape in, get a cup of coffee and prop my feet up on the desk and just watch throw after throw after throw. And you'll watch Dak Prescott and just drop back. You get a template of how he plays the game. And he goes through all those throws. And what jumped out at me was his ability to hang in the pocket and process information quickly. It's uncommon for rookie quarterbacks to do that. Obviously the experience, he got with Dan Mullen at Mississippi State really helped him. But very few guys in their rookie year showed the ability to process that information quickly. And it was early. It was early in the season. That New York Giants game to open the season. You could see that, that he was ready for the NFL. The game wasn't too big for him, but it was amazing how he got, as the season wore on, better in the pre-snap phase, identifying the defense, better in the post-snap phase, identifying the defense, and just had the uncanny ability to throw the ball with accuracy. Now, I'll say that he threw with accuracy, but it's also an area I believe he has to improve on. As you go through your rookie season to the second season, you're going to get better, and I would say Dak must improve on the accuracy aspect of his game.
How convinced are you, Ron, that we're seeing the beginning of a career that will lead to Dak being considered an elite top 5, top 10 franchise-type quarterback? I mean, he's a top 10 quarterback right now based on one season of play. And you look at the weapons that he has around him, and it's, I always say the quarterback is a dependent position. You depend on other people doing their job so you could do yours. And, when you look at the people that Scott Linehan has put around him, Jason Garrett has put around him, it starts with the guys up front. You got a Smith, a Collins, a Frederick, a Martin, and now a Chaz Green going to step in or probably that right tackle spot. You've got an offensive line that can road grade people. They're going to run the ball first. Then they're going to throw the football with the action pack, and you've got a plethora of rivers that can catch the football, that are smart, that read coverage well. So, look at Dak, the weapons he has around him. I mean, how can you not be excited about the future of Dallas Cowboys, particularly on offense?
To what degree were you surprised Tony Romo decided not to continue his NFL career, even if it meant moving to another team? And clearly he would have had an opportunity with someone like the Houston Texans, a team that is similar to Dallas in terms of having Super Bowl ambitions if they have the right player at the quarterback position. Did it surprise you that Tony left the game after all these injuries and decided to pursue his second career at this point?
Absolutely. And I think you said it when you said injuries. To me, that was it. Through the years, I've gotten to know Tony Romo very well. I know the type of person he is. I know the type of player he is. And, oh, by the way, I think he'll be great in the broadcast booth. I've done some chalk talks with him at the Super Bowl and different things like that. And he's very articulate. He's very personable. He has a wonderful feel for the game. So he'll be great in the broadcast booth. But, in looking at it and being objective and honest, I can speak from my own experiences. You like to play as long as you can. It's a great game, and you want to leave the game a champion. And the one thing that I look back on my career, we lost the Super Bowl in 1980 to the Oakland Raiders. That loss still haunts me to this day, and that's a long time ago. So any player, worth his salt wants to leave the game a champion. And Tony's had a great career, but he's never won that championship. And I thought he still had a couple years left, some gas in the tank where he could contribute to a quality team, maybe in Houston, maybe in Denver, where there's a great supporting cast where he could have won that championship. So, yeah, to a certain degree, knowing how competitive Tony is, I am surprised that he left the game. But then when you think about it hard, he's been beat up the last 3 or 4 years. He had a great opportunity in television, and he seized that opportunity.
Do you think he's done playing, or do you think he'll be tempted, like many quarterbacks are, to come back to the field if there's a phone call at some point? Is that going to be a temptation for him, do you think?
I think so. I still think I could play. I wish someone would call me. I understand the job pays pretty well nowadays.
I didn't mean to laugh like that, Ron.
No, that's okay. I'm laughing myself. It is amazing. That urge never. I haven't thrown a meaningful pass for like 27 years, but I still think I could play. But that's part of your fabric. That's part of who you are. That's part of your competitive spirit. And I think that's what made Tony Romo the quarterback that he was. But I'm sure there's probably something in his contract that says if an opportunity comes up, he has the opportunity to go somewhere else, and who knows who's going to get hurt, and who knows who's going to stay healthy. And Tony may get a call, and he may say, "Golly, Tom Brady just sprained his ankle. Maybe I'll go up to New England and play with those guys." I don't know. I'm just being hypothetical here, and thinking what Tony might think. But I wish him the very best.
We'd have to get that information about a Tom Brady injury from Gisele Bündchen, his wife. It wouldn't come from Bill Belichick in all likelihood, based on
it wouldn't come from Bill. You know that.
Talking to Ron Jaworski on the Doomsday Podcast. Ed Werder, Matt Mosley, Jaws coming to us from the Jersey Shore. I'm sure it's just a gorgeous view from where he's talking to us right now. Probably better than, Ed has a good view too. Ed's coming to you live from Colorado. He's just up in the mountains. I'm in an office building off the tollway in Dallas. It's not quite as picturesque. Now,
yeah, you lose that competition for sure.
Yeah, I think so.
That's correct.
Ron, you talked about the supporting cast. How big an impact we've seen? Dallas, of course, made a huge effort to build an offensive line, and they've put together they've got 3 all-pro linemen in front of Dak now, and that group will hopefully be able to grow. We see what the Eagles have done in free agency. Now, we've also seen in the past when they put that dream team together, the infamous Vince Young quote from years past, that you can't always count that much on free agency. Bringing in Torrey, bringing in Alshon Jeffrey, where do you think this unit is now, and how much more firepower? Because we all know how frustrated fans were with that receiving core, the amount of drops, and that was a tough thing for a rookie quarterback to endure, is what you mentioned a little while ago.
Well, I'll go back to your first comment on the Cowboys' offensive line. And a lot of teams saw the success of the Dallas Cowboys, and they tried to replicate the process, to develop a rock-solid offensive line. Then you get an Ezekiel Elliott to pound the football behind that terrific offensive line. And so the template was there. The blueprint was there. All of a sudden, you get Ezekiel, you get Dak, and you got those explosive receivers, and you sneak in a Cole Beasley in the slot, that now defined position in the NFL, that slot position, and you have a prolific offense. When you look at the Philadelphia Eagles right now, they probably have the second-best offensive line in the NFC East. Dallas, number 1, the Eagles probably number 2. So they're going to get back to a staple of running the football, mixing in the play action. The tight end position in Philadelphia is very solid. With Zach Ertz, he's a guy that you can move in many different positions. Brent Selleck move in many different positions, and again, they like to use that scat back as well. And this receiving core now in Philadelphia, you mentioned Torrey Smith and Alshon Jeffrey. When you got a Jordan Matthews at 6'4", 6'5", this is now a big group of wide receivers, big catch radius. So I expect Carson Wentz to have a better year because of the supporting cast and the catch radius of the receivers he now has.
One of the people who's been a frequent guest player of some renown at your tournament has been Michael Vick, who obviously was with the Atlanta Falcons and with the Philadelphia Eagles, and now he's talked about Ron becoming a quarterback coach in the NFL. Given his skill set, given that he's left-handed, given the experiences that he's had, do you think he's going to get an opportunity to do that? And what do you think he would add in that way?
I would love to see Vick get that opportunity. You know, through the years, and particularly the time here in Philadelphia, I've gotten to know Michael, and we all know, you know, the trials and tribulations he's had in his life, and he's overcome an awful lot. He's a very persistent guy, and I really like Michael Vick. And he knows the game of football. You know, I've sat with him and just talked the game, talked coaching, talked the position, and I actually think Michael would be a very good coach. You know, it's going to be difficult to jump immediately into the NFL. Michael's going to need to, you know, go somewhere and get some seasoning and work with some quarterbacks. But here's a guy that has overcome an awful lot in his life. You know, when people said no to Michael, he said go, and he's overcome a lot of those roadblocks placed in front of him. So I'd like to see him get the chance, if he wants to coach, to get into coaching.
And I think it would be hard to find somebody, you know, as we look around at some league topics, who were bigger advocates not so long ago of Colin Kaepernick, who obviously protested in a way that offended many people and potentially, based on what we're seeing right now, offended 32 NFL owners to the point that nobody's willing to sign him even as a backup, although we don't know what his salary demands are and we don't know what his willingness is to come in as a number 2 quarterback. But what do you think about Colin Kaepernick not being on a roster at this point? And do you think it's a clear case of him being blackballed by the NFL?
You know, I really don't know what blackball means, Ed. I really don't. Is it like 2 teams saying they don't sign Colin Kaepernick? You know, is it the personnel department saying he can't play anymore? Is it his protests last year that have obviously kept him off the team roster? I don't know exactly what that means. It's difficult to even make a comment on that. But I will comment on is his playing ability. The guy can flat out play the game. If you put and you watch Colin Kaepernick, he was a playmaker. He can still run. He can still throw the ball. He needs to get in a good system. And by the way, you know, I talked about, you know, Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott and you know, their ball placement and where they threw the football. And you go through Colin Kaepernick a year ago, 331 passes. Only 7 of those balls were interceptable, as opposed to what I was talking about with Wentz at 31 and back at 13. He only had 7 interceptable balls. So he's not a guy that is with the football and turning the football over and making interceptions. And he's a guy with experience. He's been to championship games. He was inches away from winning the Super Bowl. His skill set, to me, still projects to be a starting NFL quarterback. I can't speak to why he isn't, but when I look at him on tape, I think there is stupidity around the NFL for not having this guy on someone's roster.
When you look at where he was, as you mentioned, he was a throw or 2 away from maybe an ill-timed timeout away from being a Super Bowl winning quarterback, to where he is now in terms of his game. Has he regressed, or do you see a guy who's improved steadily as a passer and as a quarterback?
I still take some heat on Twitter, it seems, from the comments I made years ago about, I said Colin Kaepernick could be one of the great quarterbacks of all time. And I said it when he missed the weeks after he missed Michael Crabtree with a chance to win the Super Bowl by inches. You know, he was playing at a very high level. I made that comment because I saw the skill set, I saw the evolution of the league, where it was going with the mobile quarterback, the spread offense, Tony Reed, and I saw a terrific quarterback coach in Jim Harbaugh, who coaches hard and makes guys play with discipline, and he's on your butt all the time and makes you play the game the right way. And I thought in that situation, that environment was perfect for Colin Kaepernick to develop into a quarterback. As we all know, the San Francisco 49ers became a total joke and a mess in the National Football League. with Harbaugh leaving and Kaepernick not getting any coaching, his game did regress. So I think if he gets in a situation where there's a coach that coaches him hard, I think he could be an NFL starting quarterback once again.
Well, it's fascinating to think that he's still, and you see even Seattle, who they bring in, Austin Davis. I mean, and of course everybody now, anytime Cowboys just brought in another quarterback, Dysart, the former University of Arizona quarterback, and it seems unfathomable to a lot of folks that he's not out there. And so, of course, it becomes, what is this all about? So it's a fascinating story. I do want to ask you one more thing, Ron, about now. How many golf courses do you have, and how many of those golf courses has Ed tried to play for free?
Ed is my guest whenever he comes into Pennsylvania or New Jersey or Delaware in our region. I own and operate 7 golf courses. I was always scared to death that my career would end quickly, so I invested my money in golf courses. And, pretty much now I play a lot more golf. And my son, who was a terrific golfer, went to Delaware, graduated in business leadership, had a baby son just 2 days ago, is now the company. I just play golf a lot and have fun, but I'm very thankful for a wonderful family that loves the business.
Well, I tell you, congratulations on being a granddad. I know that Ed has enjoyed that immensely. I rarely see him around here anymore because he's always making a trek to Colorado to be with his grandson Henry. And I know.
And by the way, this is a milestone moment we should share. Little Henry turned 2 years old today, so we are here in Colorado to celebrate that wonderful occasion.
That's a very
that is a milestone, and as we get older, it becomes more about the kids and the grandkids. It's exactly where I am right now. I'm very fortunate to have 4 tremendous grandsons, so I guess I got a foursome of golfers to play with.
and someday I'll have to tell little Henry the unfortunate news that I did not have a career in the NFL, short or long, and that I didn't have the money to invest in golf courses, and so therefore he'll have to pay dues.
Have you thought about, Ron, doing the, you've got the Robert Trent Jones Trail of golf courses. Have you put together, I mean, that would be a pretty awesome, the Jaws Trail or the Ron Jaworski Trail, where people could play all the courses and sort of make a trip out of this. I mean, I hope you've thought of this. If not, I can sort of come up with these concepts for you.
It's funny you ask, because I have thought about that, and I am one golf course away. I need one more New Jersey Shore golf course in the Atlantic City area to make that pop. You are correct. I do want to, I don't know if it'll be the Jaworski Trail or the Jaws Trail or something like that, but I'll ask Ed for some creative ideas to help me out with that. But yeah,
Boardwalk Empire comes to mind. Boardwalk Empire, stealing the name of a recent series on HBO on the Atlantic City area. I like Ron Jaworski's Boardwalk Empire.
I like that.
Well, now, Ron, I do have to ask. Ed has, and you can feel free not to answer. Ed has, I know it's shocking, Ed's been a little more vocal than others about his job status. A ton of fans, and your name has been out there, been mentioned, Ron, although I don't think you've made any public comment that I've seen. Can you address sort of what your future holds? Because a lot of us want to continue to be able to be entertained and informed by Ron Jaworski, and we're sort of wondering what the situation is.
I wish I could give you a definitive answer, but I don't have one. Number one, I'm absolutely very grateful and thrilled to have worked at ESPN for 27 years. I still may continue to work at ESPN. I do not know what the future is going to hold. I still have a contract with them until May 31st of 2022. And if they choose to want to use me in some other areas, that is being talked about with my agent basically as we speak. So I'm kind of the guy in limbo right now. But I do want to continue some broadcast. I love what I do. I still maintain my office at NFL Films and the film wonk that I am. I try to give the audience something that they normally don't get. It may be a little bit drilled down football, but I think there's far too much football on TV that doesn't really scratch the surface, and I try to drill down and give the viewers and the listeners something that you don't get anywhere else. Not saying I'm right or wrong, but I certainly am different.
I definitely agree with that, and I hope in whatever form it is, we get to continue to watch you. I just want you to know you're always welcome to just enter the podcast world with us. If negotiations break down or anything, we'd always like to have you.
We'd like to have at least one guy, Ron, who actually studies film, has played the game, and knows what the hell they're talking about.
Hey, I'll come on any time with you guys. Matt, Ed, just pick up the phone as the season gets going. Sit around, I got that clicker in my hand, look at the tape, and the eye in the sky doesn't lie. You guys know that it does not lie. There may be other people that give you a lot of BS, but the tape doesn't lie. And I'll tell you who's playing well, who's not playing well. That's all I talk about is what I see, and certainly not what someone else tells me.
That's what makes that NFL Edge matchup show so great and so unique, and would be so appealing in so many different markets. Is all the time that you and Merrill have invested in studying the film, and as you say, nothing prejudged. You're objective, but you know what you're looking for, and you know what you're seeing in a way that most fans don't. But you're able to use that to educate them in a way that they otherwise wouldn't have that opportunity.
Ed, it's kind of interesting because the matchup show was on the air before I started at ESPN. If I do it or not in the future, it will still be a great show. There were times people said the fans don't care about those X's and O's. That is bull. People care about football. We have so many shows on all television networks that do nothing but have a bunch of guys just throwing words out there. We use the video. We use the coaches tape on the matchup show. There's a reason it's the longest running studio show on television. Because of that, it's unique, it's different. When people at the league, people at the network said it would fail, here it is, the longest running show on television, because people want more. And I wish executives at all the networks would realize that. People want more. They don't want a bunch of people on TV screaming at each other and you're right, you're wrong. They want intellectual conversation, and they want to see why teams win and why teams lose. And the tape shows that, and networks and producers don't use enough of it.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I'm sorry that Sal Powell is always trying to take all the credit for a lot of the show's success at ESPN. Ron, I give you most of the credit. I just want you to know that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've worked with Sal for 16 years, and Merrill for 20 years on the NFL Matchup Show. And when you talk about chemistry, people talk about football teams, you can disagree, you can have different opinions, but we have ultimate respect for each other and what each other's job is. So I can't say enough about Sal and Merrill and the friendship and rapport that we've developed through the years. The chemistry is so good on that show, and that it won't be the same.
No,
we're hoping to achieve that here on this show, Ron, at some point, but I'm not sure it's possible.
Well, you know what, Ed? We'll make it happen, brother.
One of my great friends at ESPN, and you can talk about a tournament that people should really back because of not only the cause, but because of the person who puts it on and really takes care of everybody who's in attendance, and that's Ron Jaworski. And I'm grateful on a personal level to be friends with Ron and to have covered games with him. To have had meals with him and to go to his Super Bowl cigar party and all these other events. Just a terrific person. Wish you nothing but the success going forward, Ron, and thank you so much for doing the show with us.
Thank you, Ron. We'll talk to you soon. Well, we certainly thank Ron Jaworski, another great get for Ed Werder and Frito Nation Productions, obviously the Doomsday Podcast, and so many huge announcements coming soon for Doomsday. I want to continue to thank everybody coming to us, iTunes, Stitcher, iHeart, all the Google Play, all the many different ways you can get to us. Ed, and leave us a little, just comment sometime. Rate us, do whatever you want to do there, and we'd love to hear from you. And we'll continue to monitor, especially if I can figure out how to get into it. The Doomsday email account, and let you get to us through that. Now, Ed, we hit on so many interesting topics with Ron Jaworski. I thought his comments on Colin Kaepernick were very revealing and very interesting. You could tell Jaws has not been on TV in a while because I think he had stored up some thoughts and he had some great opinions. And so I thought that was great that we were able to have him on. Now, some interesting developments in Cowboys land. They had another set of OTAs, some more media access, and as we try to kind of update all our listeners, and boy, thank you so much. We had even a lot of folks, a lot of feedback on the Randy Galloway episode, and people love that. And we're talking to Randy. He might join us more. People want him to maybe drop on with us on more of a regular basis. We'll continue to talk about that, and obviously it'll be a tough negotiation with Randy because the man knows how to get some money. He's proven that throughout his career. Ed, I would say this Jalen Smith continues to be a huge story, the Cowboys linebacker. And, of course, we had him on and spent, 30, 40 minutes with him talking about everything. But all everyone wants to talk about is how is his leg doing, the situation with his left leg, and is he going to have to play with a brace? Well, we at least had some incremental news. It was the first time reporters had been allowed to watch him. Now, it was only individual drills, but as you noted earlier, Ed, they also he posted some of the video on Twitter, and so people can see it for themselves. I think it's probably a great feeling for him to at least get some news out there that, hey, I'm playing, I'm moving around. What did you, Ed, read into that? And just from the little footage we've seen, what did you take away from Jalen Smith in his comeback attempt?
Well, I think that in general, and I assume you ascribe to this as well, that anything that happens in these off-season, organized training activity, OTAs, as the NFL calls them, are generally greatly exaggerated and ultimately not all that important. But I think this is something of some consequence. And, when we had him on as a guest, you came away with a sense that he's beyond determined. He's obsessed with getting back on the football field and being what he once was. And I think you have to keep in mind, what we're seeing, while it is improvement, and that is significant in every regard as it pertains to him coming back from this terrible knee injury and the nerve damage. And I have to keep in mind that he's not working every day, that there's not contact involved, but he is still wearing the brace on his foot. And I think that's the thing that concerns people the most. Is whether a middle linebacker in the NFL can have enough speed, enough change of direction, can take people on if he's wearing something like this to prevent drop foot. But he seems to feel like what he's doing and what he's achieving is sending him in the direction he wants to go, and believes ultimately that he is going to be ready for training camp. And I think that's when, really the preseason games are when we're going to get a sense of where he is and what ultimately we think he's capable of doing at the linebacker position coming off of this horrific injury. But I think it is important that he's on the field, that he's participating in a way that he never has before, if for no other reason than it rewards him for the commitment that he's made and allows him to continue to invest fully in making this comeback.
This is a story that I've had trouble with, and I've told you this, because I am, as far as him being able to play from just a reporter's angle or, trying to think about, what I would write and writing some columns on this, I still remain very cynical that he's going to, if we're just going to take all the sort of hope and all that out of the equation and just look at the medical and just look at sort of compare him to others, I'm still very cynical in my thoughts that he's going to have a big impact. But to what you said, when you see sort of his attitude and how remarkable a guy he is, you just can't help but want him to have this opportunity and to break through. And for people that maybe haven't ever really heard from Jalen. They just sort of read about him and wonder. I just want to remind everybody that you can go in our archives and you can find those at iTunes or the Apple Podcasts, all the various places you can go and catch up on that and hear that whole interview that we did with Jalen Smith about 3 weeks ago when we were in a high-end jewelry store and over at North Park. What are you laughing at?
That might have been the Dak Prescott interview at the high-end jewelry store. I think we were sequestered in a radio conference room at Frito Productions when we talked to Jalen. It was 40 quality minutes.
Please don't clean me up too much. Let's Frito will clean that up a little later, I hope. Frito, by the way, just being a great just a great producer today. Some of the sacrifices he's made, they will go unmentioned. I won't say what it is, but I'll just say he's really.
We're going to find out. We're going to find out in this podcast just what range of Frito's capabilities are as a producer.
We'll give it a look. Now, in other developments with the Cowboys, some interesting comments, Ed, coming from Dez, who, and I'll paraphrase, has gone on record saying this is the most talented team he's been on with the Cowboys. This is the most talented group. Now, there are some different ways to read into that and some of those comments. But now, I will say this. I believe that these receivers know where their bread's buttered. And they know, listen, I need to do everything in the world to get on the same page with this new quarterback. One of the big moments from last season that stood out in my mind was very early on. I thought this was a big moment for Dak. When Dez missed, 2 or 3 games, he had some sort of issue, and maybe with his foot. But I just thought it was a great moment for Dak because in all his interviews, he didn't say anything negatively about Dez, but Dak basically said, hey, we're going to go with who's here. We can run our offense. We'll be fine. And I just thought it was one of those things where there was no panic at all, and it was a great response from him. I think Dez, Ed, this is just my thought, I think Dez is feeling he's hearing some of these voices out here that are saying not an elite wide receiver, not in, and I say that maybe that's not fair, at least not on that tier of Antonio Brown with the Steelers, certainly Julio Jones of the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah, I think people are sort of putting him on that second tier, and Dez, this is a big, big season for Dez Bryant.
I mean, he's got paid franchise player money when he was designated with that. And so he makes money that's based on performing like a top 5 receiver. And since he got paid, that hasn't happened. His statistics do not put him in the elite level of receivers the past 2 years. And a lot of that is because of the injuries. And if you remember when he suffered the injury, there were questions, as there are now about Jalen Smith, about whether he'd ever be the same player. Now, Julio Jones is proof that you can overcome that injury and be a dominant receiver again, although it took him time as well. I think Dez is spectacularly motivated by where he knows he stands among receivers in the NFL. And he also, as you suggested, has seen the fact that the Cowboys can win without him. They went to Green Bay without him, and I think every receiver who was active that day, and it was like 5 different guys, including Lucky Whitehead, performed in big moments and created a victory the Cowboys probably didn't expect under the circumstances at Lambeau Field against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. So I do think, though, that he may be going a bit too far when he, in June is calling this the most talented Cowboys team he's ever played for. And I still think that they're really good on one side of the ball, and they're a huge question mark on the other side of the ball, where they don't have an established pass rusher, and it's pretty obvious with the turnover in the secondary and the losses they suffered in free agency, some by choice, quite honestly, that they're going to be challenged on the defensive side of the ball, and especially in a division, where you look at the Philadelphia Eagles and they go out and get Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith, and maybe they signed Jeremy Maclin, who's been released. The Giants went out and signed Brandon Marshall, and the Redskins went out and got Terrell Pryor. So you're talking about a big receiver on all three of the teams in their division, and multiple teams in their division have upgraded at that position and made themselves better potentially on offense. And the Cowboys face the prospect of being worse on defense this year than they were a year ago.
I think you're right, and this so much you can't have things hinging on a guy trying to make a remarkable recovery, and there's so many things. I did notice that I liked Rod Marinelli's quote the other day from OTAs. I don't know if you saw this. Taco, he was asked about Taco, how's he looking, and Rod, as only Rod could, said, looking great in his underwear. And and then he went on to say, hey, he's working. But, basically the point was it's really hard to tell, as you noted earlier in some of these OTAs. But I don't know. It's just fun to hear a decorated war veteran in Rod Marinelli, a tough, grizzled man, say something like that. And I think that's good. Ed, during one of your fascinating answers, and lengthy answers, I might add, but again, very, very well-informed answers, I was doing a tad bit of research. And
which one of those answers are you referring to? Because all of them were that way, I think.
I don't know.
Can you be more specific, please? Can you narrow it down?
I don't know. Frito's going to have some editing to do here. No, let me just say this. From a Twitter standpoint, and Ed, you're up over 200,000. I want to congratulate you on that. I think it continues to grow. I think your recent job status or job change, whatever status it is, has even, you've even added more. It's been remarkable. I was just noticing that Dak has raced past Tony Romo, and that's a little surprising to me as huge of a personality. Now, possibly this is, I've always contended that Romo doesn't even use his own account. Someone else does this for him. But Romo,
maybe the lovely Candace.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't think Romo messes with it. I really don't. He has 381,000 followers. Jalen Smith is going to surpass him this season. That is, we're talking about a second-round linebacker is going probably, I don't know, maybe Tony's broadcasting career.
Who hasn't even played. Second-round linebacker who hasn't even played yet.
Yeah. So Jalen Smith is about 300,000. Not that we measure everything in life by Twitter followers, but we sort of do. And
I wish we did.
And our buddy Dak, who was on with us at a high-end jewelry store, I might add, a few weeks ago, over 700,000 Twitter followers. So he is.
I think the race to 1 million is on for all of us.
I think, boy, you talk about somebody trailing in a big way. It's me. I have made the proclamation. I don't even think I told Frito this. I told somebody in my family recently. If I can get to 40,000 followers, which is where I was when I foolishly gave away my ESPN account. Did you know that I started over at 0? Like I didn't, how you kept your account and changed it and have a cool Twitter handle like RFA, Edward or RFA now. I just traded mine in. Like I just gave all my followers away.
And you were at 40,000.
Yeah. And a lot of that was because of the ESPN platform, and that was nice, ESPN.com. So I started over from 0. If I could get to 40, I would give up Twitter and not use it anymore. I'm just going to give it up.
Wow.
Because it is one of the I need it for my job to a certain extent, but it's become such a time drain for me that if I get it to 40, and people might get it to 40 just to get me off Twitter, but I am going to retire from Twitter.
I think you've just encouraged a lot of people to follow you with that statement. I quite honestly find you an interesting follow just because there's a certain amount of subtle snark to almost every single post, and I'm a big fan of snark, even like outrageously obvious snark, but even better than that is sort of very subtle. What did he mean by that snark? That maybe most people don't even get it. I like that.
I appreciate that. I'll tell you, there's a few people that don't like it, namely, if I was going to say like the person who hated it the most in my life, it would be Chuck Cooperstein, voice of the Mavs. a man who's engaged in some Twitter battles with me, but he does not appreciate snark. So I appreciate you, Ed, for liking that. One last Cowboys note: they did bring in another quarterback and sent one on his way, but Zach Dysert has arrived. It's Dysert, former Pac-12 quarterback. Ed, people wondering out there, okay, what does this mean? Does Kellen Moore have some competition now? Is this guy just going to be a third-string quarterback? What do you read into this latest acquisition?
And I think they continue to bring in quarterbacks to take a look at. I see this as more of a arm type of player. I think it's going to be very difficult for anybody at that level to come in and unseat Kellen Moore, given the way he played when he got in the games 2 years ago at the end of the year, and knowing the strong sponsor he has in offensive coordinator Scott Linehan. Scott Linehan is a devout believer in Kellen Moore. He's the reason that Kellen Moore is on the roster. He's the reason Kellen Moore has gotten into games. There were other people on the coaching staff who were beyond skeptical about putting Kellen Moore into a game. But I think now that he's been in a game, I think they feel a lot better about that position and that player. So I think unless they go out and sign, maybe Colin Kaepernick or somebody like that, which I just don't see, I think it's going to be very difficult for anybody who hasn't played a significant number of games and started in the NFL to come in and take the place of Kellen Moore on this roster.
I think you're right on that. I do want to say, Ed, give our listeners and our devoted subscribers, and you could do it for free right there on Apple Podcast. And I've been showing people the iPhone app or the podcast app, and it's just incredibly easy to do and follow us. But give people they just kind of a little bit of a sliver of the Werder life right now. Where are you in Colorado? What's your view like right now as we record this on a Thursday, getting ready for an episode you will hear, of course, early Monday morning?
I prefer not to be too specific as to my whereabouts, but we are in a gorgeous Front Range location. We're not up in the high country, but we have a phenomenal view of the mountains, of Mount Meeker and Longs Peak, and we're quite impressed. And, I grew up around it, and I really didn't appreciate the view I really had from my backyard. And now I'm trying to replicate that as we contemplate potentially buying a home here. Little Henry lives here. Our son and his wife and little Henry live here. And so we visited quite a bit. Most of our family is from here. So we really enjoy it, and it's going to be impossibly hot this weekend, hotter than even in Dallas. And so little Henry's going to have some of his little friends over in their swimsuits, and we're going to take him to the pool and have a little birthday celebration for little Henry.
Now, are you going to get in the pool, Ed? I mean, you're a very fair-skinned man. People that haven't seen
I'm a what?
You're very fair-skinned. You're a redhead. Oh, you don't tan well. I don't think I'm breaking news here. You do burn well. You burn quickly. Do you use like an SPF 70? What do you use to protect yourself when you jump in a pool like that?
Yeah, I'm like the only guy in my golf group who wisely uses sunscreen and applies it more than once during a round. But I generally, when I go out to the pool, will wear a Teflon suit. And so I'm very careful about that. I do take the threat of skin cancer very seriously, as I've had some of those cut out of me before, frozen. So yeah, it's a concern. But I'll get in the pool with little Henry if that's what he wants. I'll do almost anything that Henry wants. So getting in the pool is the least of the things he's asked me to do that I don't want to do, that I wind up doing to accommodate him. So.
What does he call you, by the way?
Why do we have to get into that?
I think it's important. I think this is probably
he refers to me in a very loving way. Let's just leave it at that for now, and we'll use that as a tease. Maybe eventually, depending on where this podcast goes and how big the audience is and what happens to your Twitter account, I might, in some future episode, divulge what he calls me, which is a very unique name. It was started up in jest, and now the poor young man speaks quite well, and he's calling me this name that some people might think is disrespectful. For example, if I were to coach his baseball team in a year or two, and I were to tell him to do something, and he were to respond with some reluctance, as children are wont to do, and he called me by this name innocently in his own mind, some people might audibly gasp. But let's save that for another day.
All right, I want to encourage our subscribers, our listeners, to tweet your guesses as to what you can tweet those, or you can email us.
Very few people know this, by the way, outside of the family. Very few people. It's a closely guarded secret.
I want you to tweet your guesses and reach out to us on the email. It is the Doomsday Podcast at gmail.com. The Doomsday Podcast at gmail.com. I will try to recall.
I love the way that you've just taken this thing that I've just asked you to keep private and turned it into a public contest.
I think it's very important. I think it's very important to do that and have some interaction with our folks. Ed, tell everybody goodbye from Colorado, as you described that majestic, just the vistas that you're enjoying as we speak from the Front Range, as you called it. Tell everybody goodbye and tell them you'll see them next week.
Until next week, my friends. Adios from the high country of Colorado.
All right, that's the podcast for this week. We will see you next week when we're joined by none other than Tony Romo. Good night, everybody.
Oh, boy.
Gee. I just thought I'd commit us to that.
You weren't being serious?
No.
Fully bought that. I'm thinking for sure we'd have Romo.
We already began the promotion. You have to deliver now like you did with Jalen.
All right.
It's one thing falling in love with a house, picturing yourself moving in and calling it home, and quite another navigating the world of price negotiating, mortgage lenders, and finding the budget that works best for you. An agent who's a Realtor can make understanding that world easier. Realtors have the expertise, access to proprietary data, and tools to help you get from imagining living somewhere to actually doing it. That's the kind of help we can provide. Because that's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
You haven't heard about the McCrispy yet? Well, then, you probably haven't heard the sweet silence after the first crispy bite either. Go try it for yourself to hear the best nut sound you've ever heard.